You guys today, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it. And Dylan, we know from Olympia, actually, your worship pastor, Dylan. If you don't know who he is, he was up here today, and we know both he and his wife and family. So that's why we're here, I think. We're in the know. So we got some famous people behind us. And hi, everybody. We love your city, too. We've never been here, so we're so thankful to be asked, and by your pastor and Dylan. And I didn't know this little piece of heaven existed. So I've been to Idaho, but not Boise. So kudos. You live in a beautiful part of the world. Love it. Oh,
And,
go ahead.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Who are you?
Yeah, my name's Sue. And I am a counselor, and I've been a counselor as a second career in 2011. I finished school and my internships and all that, and I began counseling at our counseling center. And I do, mainly I see teenagers on up, mainly women, but I see couples and I see men also, and sometimes grade school kids age. And I don't really have a favorite. I like all of that. We have 3 kids that are counselors, 3 daughters. That one is in Seattle area and the other 2 are with us in practice. And then we have a son-in-law that's going back for his doctorate in counseling. So it's kind of all in the family. My parents were both counselors as a second career for them, so I followed in their footsteps. And we have 6 kids, 2 boys, 4 girls in that order. We've been married 45 years. 4 of them are married, of our kids, and we have 6 grandkids. We have 4 boys and 2 girls. And our kids are now scattered across the country. One's in Texas, one's New Mexico, and then 1 in Arizona. And 2 will be moving to Arizona soon, and we'll have just 1 left in Washington. So we're getting used to that. And we're tan not because of Washington, but we also have a second home in Arizona. So we do.
And I love Arizona.
And
I love being a grandparent. It's the best thing ever for you people that are grandparents. You know what I'm talking about. Yes, thanks. The only time we got clapped on all day today, by the way.
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
So.
And the best thing being a parent and
Yes,
having a
for sure.
family. That's my best work. Well, I shouldn't take credit for it. So they're wonderful because they're wonderful people.
And my favorite my favorite worship pastor of all time is Dylan. And I think you guys have a blessing with him. And I really appreciate him. We've been depressed and angry since he left 10 years ago from Olympia. And it was really shocking to see him because when he left, he was this, in my mind, a little kid with hair and no facial hair, couldn't grow any facial hair. Then I meet him and he's bald and he's got this big beard. And I'm going and I looked online and saw him and I go, I thought Dylan was leading music. Where is he? And it was like, oh, wait, that kind of looks like Dylan, looks more like his brother. But so we're excited to be here. So. And also I noticed that there were a lot more bald brothers at the early service. So I'm assuming that's because they're more spiritual and God-centered. I'm thinking that.
Yeah,
anyway. Don't tell me any different.
probably, for sure.
Okay, so I want to introduce our topic today. Obviously, we're going to be talking about mental health and depression. And so I kind of like to talk about, just get an idea of thinking of a continuum when we think of mental health. So we have people over here that are really healthy and doing really well, and maybe just have a little bit of baggage, because we all, if we're honest, have a little bit of baggage, like the song says. And then over here that maybe have quite a bit of baggage, or maybe have some things they haven't dealt with, or they have a lot of trauma that have gone in their life. Maybe they've been in war and they're suffering PTSD. Maybe they've been sexually traumatized PTSD. So there's a lot of range in here. When we talk about depression, same thing. We're gonna have people who are just once in a while get sad, and their mood is pretty stable, to where people over here really struggling with it, and everything in between. The one thing I also want to say about depression especially is depression is for normal people. Normal people get depressed. I know we work with it and we have skills and tools to help people with depression, but the people that are getting depressed are just you kind of people, normal people. Just dealing with life and struggles that go on. It's not something that we would consider like, oh, you have a mental illness. And that just sounds so heavy, right? But depression isn't that. Depression is most of us, 35% of us in life will struggle with depression. 20% of us are struggling right now. In the US, 1 in 5 adults are struggling with depression. And things have gone up about double since COVID, and that's actually the last 10 years, we're seeing the depression rate go up significantly. And so people are struggling with this. Normal people are struggling with this. The other thing is suicide. Suicide is up. You probably heard that. Sometimes people are saying up about 30%. What we're seeing last year, about 50,000 adults in the US killed themselves, and that's 137 people a day, which when you think of it that way, that's quite a few people. Worldwide, about 800,000 people killed themselves last year. So one of the things that I'm glad we're talking about with depression is because depression is one of those things that we've worked a lot with, and also it's kind of dangerous, that it's a disorder that is one of the few that struggles with suicide. And so when we work with people, we know we're dealing with about 25% of depressed people are going to be suicidal. And we know that's where we need to be aware of it and not just sit with depression. It's a dangerous disorder if you leave it alone. And so we want to work on it and deal with it. And so we're glad to be talking to you about it in case you might be one of those people. In a room like this, probably 40 of you are depressed and probably 10 are suicidal. I don't have to have the Holy Spirit tell me that. I don't mean to be offensive, but that's just reality. That's just statistics. And so some of you in here are struggling in this area.
And we just want to take away the shame and the stigma that often comes with depression. Mainly, really Christians, sadly, I think feel more shame in that area, probably because we think, well, we have Christ, we have hope, and we do have hope, and we do have Christ, and it does make a difference, but that doesn't mean we won't still have the same struggles that everyone else has. We may have a different way to look at it, and maybe hope in the future and another life, but we could still have the very same struggles that our non-Christian brothers and sisters have. So I want all of us to hopefully go away from here, if you are depressed, feeling there is hope, but also feeling like I haven't done anything wrong. It's not that I've done something bad, or I don't pray enough, or I don't read my Bible enough, and that's why I'm depressed, or that's why my friend is depressed. That is usually not the truth. God loves you and is here for you, and even in the most difficult times, in fact, probably even more so. We do the most changes in our life, studies show, during hard times. It's when things are good, we often don't change. We won't look at things. So it's a challenge when we're going through hard times to make it through, but that's our time of growth and our time to learn about ourselves and become more mature human beings. So here are a few little verses that there's so many you can find, but just to say that God is there with you and does care for you, even in depression. So the first one is, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all their trouble. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. And that comes from Psalms 34, 17 and 18. Another one, don't be afraid, for I am with you. Don't be discouraged, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you up with my victorious right hand. That's in Isaiah 41:10. Then I love this one, cast all your care on him, because he cares for you. 1 Peter 5:7. One I did not give to be put up here. I don't know how it slipped through, but it's probably my favorite. Matthew 11:28 and 29. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. The next part, sorry, I was going to let Jeff talk, and I realized it's still me. So you can look up Bible verses on your own. There's many more. I had like a huge list. And depression isn't specifically mentioned in the Bible, but things like downhearted, brokenhearted, lots of different words that represent that. So feel free to look that up if you need some hope that God is with you. We're going to go over something that maybe some of you would want to know. What is the diagnosis of depression? For us, you can say, oh, I'm depressed. I used to tell my husband, I'm so depressed. And he would go, clinically? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I don't know.
Actually, she would say, no, I'm just being dramatic.
Well, maybe I said that too.
She would say that.
You know me, I'm dramatic, I'm emotional. But the real diagnosis, we use the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. And so this comes from there. You might be interested to know what that is. So if we can put that slide up, it should be somewhere. Yep, there it is. And you can take a picture of it if you want, so you know. Maybe you know people that have this, you're curious, or for yourself. So for a diagnosis of depression, you need 5 of the following ones we're going to talk about. But you definitely need either number 1 or 2. If you don't have either of those, then you won't get a diagnosis of depression. And like Jeff said, we can be on a continuum. You might not have this diagnosis, but the things we're going to talk about today are for everyone. And you can do the skills that we talk about just to help out of maybe sadness that you can't get out of or anxiety. So first one, depressed mood. Well, that's a surprise. If you're depressed, you have a depressed mood. Sad, empty, hopeless most of the day, nearly every day. And for kids and teens, that might be irritable mood.
And yes, it might be for men too. Because men are children and adolescents sometimes. Right?
Number 2, markedly diminished loss of interest and pleasure in most activities most of the day. So things have changed in where your pleasure is. You don't like the things you used to like. 3, significant weight loss and weight gain, and that is 5% of your body weight in a month. And that is not due to dieting or for other reasons. So it's just losing it or gaining it because of the depression. Insomnia, hypersomnia, that just means you can't sleep or you sleep too much. You've seen a big change in that. Psychomotor agitation and retardation nearly every day. That sounds terrible. Basically what it is, you're really hyper and anxious, you can't sit down, or you've got the opposite problem.
And then we go to the next one is fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day, which is just basically feeling very tired and lethargic during the day. And then the next one is feelings of worthlessness or excessive inappropriate guilt nearly every day. And then diminished ability to think or concentrate or indecisiveness nearly every day. And then the last one is recurrent thoughts of death or suicide. So when we look at people and we look at these symptoms, what we find is that people can move from not being depressed into a depressed state within 2 weeks. And so during that time, what happens is we move into this depressed state and the shell gets built around this state. And now we're in this thing and we're depressed and we're kind of stuck in it. And then it takes work. And we're going to talk more about how we get stuck in it and how we get out of it now. Go ahead.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about that a little bit more or not?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So how do we get into depression? And if some of you are there, you may relate with this. If you know somebody that is there, this might interest you quite a bit. But I think I was clinically depressed at one point in my life. I didn't get diagnosed with that. And it turns out it wasn't important that I got diagnosed, I suppose, because I still got the help. But when I was about 30 years old, we lived in Monterey, California. It's a beautiful place, should have been happy. We had 4 little kids. I was homeschooling. We had just moved. My husband had joined the military, whole new life, to do his internship after grad school. We were struggling. I felt like I just couldn't get a hold of anything well. And I ended up going to counseling because I just could hardly get out of bed. And I felt so hopeless, like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I do this? Everyone else does this. Why can't I function? And going to counseling turns out to be one of the best things I did. What my counselor helped me see was I'm a perfectionist. And I kind of knew that. I mean, almost all my teachers would tell me that, but I just ignored it like, oh, well, so what? What's wrong with that? I'm trying to be perfect. can't I achieve that goal? Turns out only Jesus can be perfect, weirdly. But what she helped me see is just a simple, what I was doing to myself. And one of the things, the activating events, were issues. Like I just said, some things had happened, but that isn't what caused my depression. My belief, or what I was saying to myself about what was going on in my life, is what caused my depression. So my belief was I have to be perfect to just be okay. I can't be okay unless I do all these things that I had listed off. And in my mind, that seemed normal. And that seemed obvious, of course. And I thought everyone else was exactly the same way. And I still remember the words she used. And it was a simple thing. She goes, how many other moms do you see out there doing what you're doing? And it took me back, like no one. And she's like, yeah, there you go. Do you think you're putting pressure on yourself to be something that you don't need to be? And it was the first time I had thought of that. And from then on, it took a while, but I began to heal and begin to give myself grace and begin to see that I don't have to be this level. I can be here and still be okay and still be loved and still be enough and still do a good job in life and be a good mom. So the activating event is one thing. It might be financial problems for some of you, work, relationship, health, pain. Pain is a hard one, because it changes the chemistry in our brain. It uses up all the serotonin, and so we don't have much left. So you can be depressed because of that.
We talked a little bit about this last night, but pain gets you in two ways. One is pain eats up serotonin in your brain, chronic pain, and then the other way it gets you is it talks to you. And when we're in pain, it's very common for us to go, I can't stand this, I can't live with this is awful, this is terrible, I can't do this for another year. And imagining that this is going to be our life forever. So it gets us in two ways. And I went to a conference on psychiatry, and one of the things the psychiatrist said that, in her opinion, every chronic pain person should be on medication for depression because of the serotonin levels just being low from just that. So if you're in chronic pain, it's something to be aware of. That chronic pain is very difficult to live with. And I would encourage anything you can do, or as much as you can do, reasonably do, to get out of chronic pain, we want to do that because it's not good for us.
Mm-hmm. And trauma is also something, sometimes we repress our trauma from our past, and it comes up in a wave, and that can cause depression. So realizing what that activating event is important, so then we can begin to change our beliefs. And also memory can past memories, yes. Beliefs, thoughts and beliefs, what I was just talking about. Mine was perfectionism. I used a lot of shoulds and shouldn'ts, and I have now changed those. If anybody says should and shouldn'ts, I'm sure every one of you do, because I have not had a client so far that doesn't say have to, need to, should, shouldn't.
And we say, that's shoulding on yourself, by the way.
Or shoulding on others.
Yeah. And it's not a pleasant experience, just to let you know.
And it does hurt us, it turns out. So you might want to change it to want to. Let's say I should homeschool all my kids. Well, can I change that to want to? Oh, I can change that, and that just feels different. A should is heavy, guilt-ridden, and often is a bad motivator. Guilt is not a good motivator, it turns out, but wanting to do something, or to someone else, oh, I wish you would do that, or I would like you to do that, not you should do that. You need to do that. You have to do that. In fact, I am so into this now that I hate the should word and shouldn't, that if Jeff will say to me, hey, you need to, which that's the same word in mine, you need to do X, Y, Z today. I go, no, I don't need to, but would you like me to? And he's like, oh. But it does make a big difference. So if you're a shoulder, try to change those words.
Like we said, it's not very pleasant to
Yeah.
should on yourself. So as we get through, so we have an activating event that this is for most of us that get depressed. And this is like, again, normal people stuff. We have an activating event that happens in our life. We think about that activating event, and the thoughts we have can be surfacey thoughts or deeper thoughts. And oftentimes those deeper thoughts are those beliefs we have that we've had for years. The beliefs that maybe we're not worthy, that we don't deserve good things, that we're worthless, that God hates us, that we're bad, that our sin defines us, the things we did in the past. That's who I am. all those things can lead to the thinking that we do, and we spend time on that, and then we move into this emotional consequence, which is depression. And then we're stuck there. And what do we do to get out of it? Well, one of the things we can do, some of the things we can do to get out of it are some pretty simple things that are really actually pretty helpful. And one thing I would say in the church that hopefully most of you here are this, is that just being a believer is a helpful thing. One of the things I'm finding is that in the new research coming out, good research, the research in psychology is supporting faith. For example, there was a big study on happiness, and a book was written about it, and they were looking at what makes people happy. And they said, okay, we're going to look at everything in their culture that says makes us happy. Money, fame, fortune, stuff, all that, sex, everything. And they looked at it, studied it, and they found, wow, this stuff isn't making us happy. Sometimes it's actually making us miserable. And this atheist did this study, and at the end of the study, he said, okay, I don't know why this is true, because God isn't real, but the happiest people in the world love God and love others. And I went, oh, Jesus said that. He didn't tell us that part, though, that it's going to make us happy, but it does. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that we find is that the third thing is that having a purpose in life to live for brings happiness as well. So things that we talk about in our faith, things that your pastor said earlier today. I want you to help you connect with people. We want you to help connect with others and God. We want to also help you find your purpose in life. These are the things that make us happy. And we just didn't know that that was part of Christianity. And so it's really, and I'm finding more and more the studies that are coming out, just agreeing. Sex would be another one. Big study on sex here recently. Guess who the happiest people are sexually? Heterosexual couples that are with one person. Happiest people in the world, sexually. Is that what our world's telling us now? Not at all, not even close. If I wasn't a Christian and I was just a psychologist, I think I'd become a Christian just by the research that's going on, that's pointing that Jesus is the way to all sorts of things, not just spiritual health, but mental health as well.
And even if we look at, we call it self-talk, so what you're saying to yourself and trying to change that to be more positive, more encouraging, more truthful. You can find that in the Bible, especially in Proverbs, all sorts of verses about the tongue. And one I like, the tongue has a power of life and death. It's in Proverbs 18. And that means to yourself too. You're with yourself all day long, and even when you're sleeping, your subconscious is working. So if you're speaking death into your life and you can't see the good that's going on in your life, and you might be in a hard place, there's still things you can do to speak more positively to yourself and try to conquer those lies that you're telling yourself about your world, about how you fit into it, because God loves you and He does have a purpose for you. So if you can think about, gosh, what I'm saying to myself, it's like a best friend following me around all day long. You're fat, you're ugly, you're just a loser, you're never going to make anything of yourself. You go to bed at night, finally, relief, your friend is there talking in your ear. All night long, how do you think you'd feel the next day when you get up? You're not going to feel very happy. You might be depressed, and rightly so. That's really negative. But we carry ourselves wherever we go. So that, if we're doing that, we are essentially our best friend talking terrible to us all day.
Which is not a very good friend.
So if you can change those, so if you can change, not a good friend at all. So if you can change what you tell yourself, that is very, very helpful, and you can figure out what your lies are. You'll see.
Another thing that we find that's easy, that can be a simple thing that you can do that really actually finds helps is gratitude.
Yep.
It's all through the Bible. We hear about being thankful. And one of the things we find that even people that are just take one time a week where they sit down and for 5 minutes think about what they're grateful for, their depression score gets better. And I encourage people I see to do that daily. And just once a day, get up in the morning, usually, and when you're having your quiet time, or just take a few minutes just to think, what are 3 things I could be grateful for today? And just think about them a little bit. In Philippians 4, Paul, who's in prison, most likely going to get killed, says whatever is true, noble, good, blah, blah, blah. I can't remember all of them. But they're all like, hey, think about these things. In fact, he says, dwell upon these things. So these are the kind of things that when we dwell on these things, they help our mood. And they help us appreciate what we have.
Mm-hmm. And they might not get you out of depression immediately, but our hope is once you practice this, you'll catch yourself in that negative place more and be able to argue with yourself. One way to say it is 3 C's, the letter A, B, C. You catch it. So what am I saying? You check it. Is that true? Is like me with the perfectionism. Oh, are all the other moms doing this? Is this the line that I should be meeting? No. And then I change it. What do I want to change it to instead? So if you can do those, remember those 3 things, that'll help you a lot.
And the change area is also a thinking area. So one of the things we look at when we're doing this A, B, C, D, E thing that we use probably more than any tool in fighting depression and anxiety is we dispute the thinking that on the other side of us, that negative thinking, that all or nothing thinking, that mind reading, that catastrophizing, that shoulding kind of thinking, all those kind of thoughts, we dispute them, we challenge them to make sure they're accurate. Because a lot of times, again, our thinking isn't accurate. And so that inaccuracy gets us off track.
And that's where counseling can help, because you might be talking to people that are like you. They don't see your inaccurate thinking. And I know it helped me. Jeff's gone to counseling. All of our kids have gone to counseling. Their spouses have gone to counseling. And it really is helpful because you have a third person who's knowledgeable in these areas and maybe will see something you don't see and be able to be there for you in a non-judgmental manner, but help you. So you want to change those thoughts and what you're saying to yourself to be more positive, more realistic, and more helpful.
And then when it comes to helping someone who is struggling with depression, you may know some people in here or you may know some people in your world that are struggling with this. And one of the things, and one of the stories I love is Job. And the story of Job, obviously, is Job is very wealthy and very happy man, and he loses everything in like a day, where he loses his children, he loses everything he has of any financial or stuff kind of stuff, and he loses all of it, and then he loses his health, and he is miserable. And 3 of his friends come and hang out with him for 7 days, and they don't say a word. That's pretty good advice, okay? And then when they start talking, that's when they get in trouble, because they start telling him, this is why you're down, this is why this happened to you. And I think that one advice I would give for sure would be, if you know somebody that's struggling with depression, come alongside them. Be next to them, just be their friend. Hang out with them, encourage them to keep going, help them in some ways if you can. And just be there and be really careful about the advice. Don't give quick advice. Don't give easy platitudes, that kind of thing. Be there more with them as they're struggling. That will be helpful. And lots of people, we have heard from lots of people that what's helped them get through was a friend that was beside them, that just was there with them, that didn't shame them, that just hung out. And that can be very, very helpful. I would do that.
And the song Weeds in Your Garden does strike a chord with me, but also with a lot of my clients who have depression, because often, especially maybe in the Christian world, unfortunately, we want to look a certain way and we feel ashamed that we're not that way and we're not able to be happy, look at everything I have. So if you can find a good friend, if you are one of the people that are depressed right now or you know somebody, but if you can find a good, safe friend that will love you no matter where you're at and will just accept you and just sit with you like Job's friends and help you if you want it and ask for it. But definitely we're meant to be in community with others, and that is why COVID for some states like ours was really bad, because there was a lot of isolation, things were shut down for a very long time, and a lot of loneliness, which just seems, you don't want to talk to people when you're depressed, but when you do, that is the one most helpful thing you probably could do, because when you stuff, it makes it lots worse.
And one other thing is that if you have a friend who's going through depression, one thing I would recommend is if you're feeling like they're really struggling, it's okay and even desirable to say something to them and say, hey, are you feeling suicidal? And broach that topic. When you broach that topic, you're not giving them the idea. They already have the idea or they don't have the idea. It's not going to make them do it. But most of the time, people don't broach that subject. And so the person who is struggling with depression, which is about 25% of the people that are depressed, nobody's talking to them about it. And they're playing with it. And I can tell you, when you play with depression, it doesn't usually go in a good place. It goes to more and more, this probably is what I should do. And so I would approach that subject and talk to them and ask them, even go further and go, if they say yes, ask them, do you have a plan? And then ask them, do you have a way to carry out the plan? And when you hear those kind of things, then you know that, okay, now we're moving serious, and now we need to be talking a little more about you need to go get help, and you need to get it soon. And I'm your friend, but this is the time I'm going to say, I'm going to be here for you, but now it's serious, and now we got to do something. Because I'm your friend, and I want to see you stay alive because you matter to me. And people don't always like that, but they like it later. I've had to tell a lot of people, hey, I need to make sure all your guns are out of your home. Or you may even need to go to the hospital. And they don't like it now, but when they're out of their depression, they come back and they're very thankful that you intervened and got tough with them. God might have some people in your mind that you might think about that could use that same kind of friend who speaks the truth in love.
And the truth is, most of us come out of depression once we begin to talk to others, maybe go to counseling, get some good help also. We come out of it, and it's not something that stays with us the rest of life. We might be prone to it, but now we know what to do with the skills that we have.
So, there's a story in the Bible. I really like the story of Elijah. And I think it's a great story that we can talk about with depression, and it talks about everything we've just talked about. And I'll go briefly through the story because of time, but basically, if you know the story of Elijah, Elijah was a prophet during the Old Testament, and Ahab was king during his time, and Jezebel was his wife, and they were both quite evil. And Elijah he challenges Ahab's prophets to a duel. And basically says, hey, we're going to go on Mount Carmel, we're going to build these two altars to God and your God, and we're going to have a fight out there. And we're inviting everybody from Israel, and they all come, and we sit down, and then they have the battle. And the winner is the God that burns up the altar and starts and does the sacrifice. And so Elijah lets them go first. And so they start doing their thing. And they go on and on and on for hours. And they're praying to their God, and they're yelling, and they're doing all this stuff. And Elijah eventually starts mocking them. And I don't know if Elijah was married and had kids, but he has some really good dad jokes during that time. He says, maybe your God's on the toilet. Maybe he's having a hard time. Maybe he's, took a nap. Maybe he's on vacation. Maybe he's doing all this stuff. And he just gets really into them, and then they eventually, they're done. They're cutting themselves. They go for hours, and they can't do anything. And then it's his turn. He builds the altar, puts a sacrifice on it, and then he goes, and he looks up to heaven, and he goes, basically says, okay, God, your turn. And then, boom, everything comes down. He had put water all over the sacrifice to boot, which was pretty gutsy, and it all burns up. The sacrifice burns up. The rocks burns up. The whole altar burns up. All of it. And then he goes and prays for rain. Rain comes back. So he has this huge day. And then at the end of that day, Jezebel gets word of what happened. And Jezebel says, I'm going to kill you. Now, he just went through the best day ever, right? God has come through like no tomorrow. What's he do? He runs. He's scared to death. You would think maybe that he'd go, bring it on. Come on. In fact, I'm going to stay right here. I'm not moving anywhere. I'm going to stay right here, and you can just come on in, and you might get zapped too. But he didn't. He runs. He runs 75 miles, in fact. And then he has a friend with him, and he leaves his friend. He's isolating himself, and he goes further. And no time during that 75-mile run did he ever think, hey, wait a minute. God came through for me back there. I'm turning around. He was scared. He was running, and I think, creative license here a little bit, he's just feeding the thought. She's going to kill me. They've killed all these prophets. Nobody follows the Lord. I'm the only one. They're trying to kill me too, and they're going to get me. And because that's what he told the Lord later. So then he finally gets to a place. He keeps going, and finally he ends up under a tree, and he's exhausted, and that's when he says, God, kill me. Take me. Now, that was an active suicide. Sometimes I hate to say it, we call that Christian suicide, where we go, I'm not going to kill myself, but Lord, you can take me anytime if you want to. And maybe a lot of us have been there. And so God instead, very compassionately, doesn't ever tell Elijah that, hey, you remember what I just did for you? Remember what just happened there? Never says it. He came, he fed him, he let him sleep. On 2 occasions he fed him, and then he went running some more and ended up in a cave, and God comes to him, and this is when he counsels him and says to him, Elijah, what's going on? Why are you here? And Elijah says the spiel of what I just said. They're after me. They're trying to kill me. They've killed all the prophets. I'm the only one left. And now they're going to kill me. And then God does something that I think is pretty amazing. He says, well, I want to bring you to the front of the cave. And he does this thing where the wind comes, the fire comes, something else comes, and then a whisper comes. And he goes, and they say that God wasn't in those first 3 things, but he was in the whisper. And I read some concordance on that and some commentaries on this, and basically what it seems that what's going on here is this is when God's restoring Elijah's faith in God, that he sees the power of God. Oh yeah, I remember that power of God. Oh yeah, I remember that fire. Oh yeah, I remember that earthquake. And then he whispers to him. And one of the things he whispers is, oh, and by the way, you're not the only one. There's 7,000 of you. And I have a new job for you. And I have a new partner for you. And God's a great counselor, so you could do it all in one session. I can't do it in one session, but he brings him out. And I think it's a great example of somebody coming through depression and coming out of it. And I also think it's a great example of that God really will help us in this process, in this journey. He's going to help us he may use other people too. He may use a counselor. He may use friends. He may use a pastor. He may use your life group. He may use all sorts of things. But God wants you to be mentally healthy. And he wants you to be spiritually healthy, mentally healthy, physically healthy, and all these things that we're talking about can be used in that. But it's nice to know that he's on our side, and that as Christians, we can fight this spiritual part, at least. In the non-Christian world, you fight depression mentally and physically. We don't fight it spiritually. And spiritually really helps us win the battle. So, what's your takeaway today? I hope you have one. I hope the Holy Spirit is maybe saying something to you today about what can I do with this talk about depression. Remember, it's normal people stuff. What is he saying to me that maybe I need to do differently? Do I need to work on my thinking? Do I need to work on maybe my spiritual life?
Or do you want to work on your thinking?
Oh, darn it. I said it. I shoulded on you. I'm sorry for shooting on you. So what do we need to do? I said it again. What can we do to help us in this journey? And what can be our takeaway? The Holy Spirit will hopefully give you some ideas. If he gave you an idea for somebody that you know, I would take that time and reach out to that person that you know that might be struggling with depression and have a conversation with them, and maybe even considering asking them about how they're really doing.
And I would also encourage you who are struggling with it to also reach out to somebody, a safe person that you know will encourage you. and not shame you. If you notice, God did not shame Elijah. He could have. He would have the right to, maybe, but that's not helpful. And God does not shame versus our conscience. Shame is, I am bad. And when our conscience is pricked, it's, oh, what I'm doing is not helpful for me. Maybe what I'm doing is bad, but I myself am not bad. So shame versus conscience, and what you may be pricked with, your conscience in certain areas, but God will never shame you. That brings us down. That's the devil that does that, and that's never helpful. So don't shame yourself either. I want to end with just something that I thought of today. I love the verse from Philippians 1. He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. So no matter where you are today in your mental health and how you're feeling, God is there for you, and he will never give up on you.
Amen.
Wonderful.